For 52 days, detectives relentlessly hunted for the hidden truth. 52 days passed since Nancy Guthrie disappeared from her Tucson residence before dawn on February 1st, 2026. The public believed they understood the narrative. A brutal altercation, an ambush, pure mayhem inside. Yet, fresh forensic clues paint an entirely alternate picture. The crimson traces hidden inside Nancy Guthrie's residence suggest an unimaginable scenario. This wasn't a tale of frantic brutality. It reveals a narrative that feels profoundly more chilling. Calculated control, absolute precision, deeply orchestrated steps, and the exact spot authorities uncovered those drops completely shatters our theories regarding the 16-minute gap between her porch lens cutting out and her heart monitor transmitting its last pulse. Detectives spotted plasma within Nancy Guthrie's property. It wasn't splashed randomly throughout the floor plan. Not near the mattress where Savannah Guthrie claimed the intruder snatched her mother under the cover of utter darkness. It avoided the stove and the couch. It sat in one highly peculiar coordinate, exposing the exact extraction method used on Nancy. A forensic pattern specialist, holding witness credentials across 7 states and federal trials, scrutinized these specific stains. His findings completely dismantle the foundational theories driving this manhunt since day one. The data implies the crime scene was a mirage. It was heavily orchestrated. It was clinically executed. Whoever pulled this operation off functioned with a terrifying level of expertise. This breakdown relies on open-source records, professional forensics, deep journalism by Ashley Banfield from News Nation, and police press releases. Everyone remains presumed innocent until convicted by a jury. Certain details represent forensic theories and potential operational strategies explored by authorities. So who exactly is Nancy Guthrie? Nancy Ann Guthrie entered the world on June 24, 1941, in Tucson, Arizona. For 84 years, she thrived autonomously within her beloved hometown. She raised Savannah Guthrie, the familiar face co-anchoring the Today Show on NBC. Yet to her local circle, Nancy stood out for her personal achievements: a brilliant intellect, fierce self-reliance, and heavily guarded solitude. At 84 years old, she resided solo along East Calle Tumacacori near the Catalina foothills. She commuted to her own meetings. She ran her own schedule. Relatives called her remarkably lucid, insisting their mother wasn't the type to aimlessly stray. Then came the late hours of January 31st, 2026. Nancy's son-in-law, Tommaso, dropped her at her driveway around 10 at night after a private dinner. She approached her entryway, turned the deadbolt, slipped inside, and retired for the night. A few hours passed, and she vanished. By 5:52 that morning on February 1st, her friends hit dead air calling her. Relatives rushed over, only uncovering red stains on the stoop, a sabotaged security lens, and a recorded phantom creeping through the shadows. For several weeks, detectives obsessed over the crimson trails outdoors, heavily analyzing the drops, marking her exterior pavement, questioning what the trail signaled. However, authorities kept one massive piece of evidence completely buried from public view. A single crucial fact law enforcement shielded from the press. The bleeding didn't begin on the porch. It originated indoors. Before we unpack the gravity of this twist and how it shatters the established timeline of Nancy's disappearance, make sure to subscribe to Crime Uncovered and ring that alert bell to track every single puzzle piece. We dissect the hidden clues that flip the script, presenting raw facts and forensic deep dives that blow cold files open. Because with this specific crime, the exact indoor location of those stains shifts the entire paradigm. Let us examine the newly uncovered data. Ever since February 1st, 2026, a singular mystery has plagued detectives. What actually transpired inside Nancy Guthrie's walls? We know a masked suspect crept toward her camera at 1:47. We established the feed cutout. We verified internal sensors tripped at exactly 2:12. We confirmed Nancy's cardiac implant pinged its final transmission at 2:28, 16 critical minutes. That is the whole timeline. Yet, what unfolded then? Where exactly did the nightmare initiate? How did the intruder transport Nancy from her sheets to the exit? The working theory leaned heavily toward brute force. A skirmish near the nightstand, Nancy fiercely resisting before the attacker subdued her. Unbridled panic and muscle. Yet, the splatter analysis writes an entirely contrary narrative. As uncovered by investigative reporter Ashley Banfield of NewsNation, leveraging her deep-rooted insider contacts, authorities positively identified organic traces deep inside Nancy Guthrie's property. They were absent from her sleeping quarters, missing from the corridor bridging the master suite, zero signs of a sprawling pursuit throughout the interior. It pinpointed one spot, the interior entryway right past the threshold, and the droplet formation indoors perfectly mirrored the outdoor stains. The exact same 90-degree gravity drops, an identical undisturbed layout sharing the exact forensic signature. The bleeding started directly behind the entryway. The trail creeps past the main entryway, tracing a path straight down the exterior sidewalk until it abruptly vanishes. It ends right where a getaway car would idle. We are revealing these previously classified details for the very first time. This instantly sparks glaring doubts. Assuming the assault occurred where Nancy slept, why is her room completely free of gore? Had someone hauled her across the floorboards, we should see a crimson path leading straight to the main entryway. If a vicious brawl occurred, how do these crimson spots remain perfectly round and completely unsmudged? Searching for clarity, Ashley Banfield brought in Dr. Peter Valentine, a forensic science department head and associate professor at the University of New Haven. He is a renowned splatter specialist who has taken the stand in federal courts across 7 different states. His deep dive into the scene yielded conclusions that are equal parts enlightening and utterly chilling. The crimson layout spanning Nancy's property reconstructs a terrifying 16-minute window that permanently altered her fate. Dr. Valentine categorized these marks as passive drops. They fell strictly due to gravity, completely devoid of any applied force. This wasn't from a blunt strike or a frantic scuffle, it was merely leaking, which represents a crucial detail. Perfectly round, untouched marks send detectives a clear message. The movement was sluggish, heavily managed, and incredibly calculated. Sprinting causes the fluid to elongate and point forward, while dragging a body leaves behind wide, messy streaks. Brawls leave chaotic tracks, typically featuring shoe prints stomped right through the crimson mess during the commotion. We see none of that chaos. Symmetrical circles indicate the wound was hovering straight above, drifting at a creeping pace to ensure a straight drop. These untouched spots prove absolutely nobody walked over the scene. There were no scuffles or ruined marks. More importantly, Dr. Valentine pinpointed specific pools containing what experts call satellite spatter. These are microscopic secondary splashes, forming whenever fresh liquid plummets directly into an existing puddle on the floor. Such formations only appear if the wounded individual stays frozen long enough for fluid to pool in one exact spot. A solitary drop hits, followed immediately by another, striking the identical area, generating a miniature eruption. Minuscule flecks shoot outward. Finding this specific splatter pattern uncovers a truly massive clue. Nancy, or her captor, lingered at that entryway for a duration Dr. Valentine considered to be remarkably substantial. They weren't sprinting past or hurrying away. They were at a complete standstill. An action by that doorway demanded patience, perhaps unlatching the solid entrance, shifting their grip, or bracing for the kidnapping's next step. Throughout that hesitation, the fluid steadily leaked and gathered. Consider the terrifying implications of this. Nancy's abductor wasn't freaking out or sprinting blindly. He avoided careless errors, maintaining absolute mastery over the situation. At this point, we must confront an issue that has sparked intense speculation. Did this fluid leak from Nancy directly, or a contaminated item? Many suspect the attacker carried a dripping weapon instead of transporting the bleeding victim. Dr. Valentine's thorough examination completely eliminates that theory. The logic is simple. Any transported item holds limited fluid, meaning the flow steadily weakens as time passes. Weapons possess a strict maximum volume. With every fallen drop, the remaining supply shrinks. The gaps between marks widen because the supply exhausts itself too quickly. However, the layouts indoors and outdoors display a chilling uniformity. These stains don't drift further apart. Instead, they mimic the exact behavior of a continuously flowing origin. This indicates a heavily wounded human being, rather than a soaked tool. The sheer quantity stretching across both interior and exterior zones proves this leaked directly from Nancy's body. Sheriff Chris Nanos later corroborated the match. Laboratory testing proved her identity. The mystery wasn't about the victim's identity, but rather the dark narrative these stains secretly outline. This specific juncture is exactly where Dr. Valentine's specialized knowledge changes the game. In order to form completely round, perpendicular splashes, the fluid requires an absolutely unobstructed drop straight to the floorboards. Fabric cannot soak it up, nor can limbs block the trajectory. It must fall without interference. Assuming the injury was facial or cranial, her skull had to be angled perfectly to allow a sheer, uninterrupted plunge. Perfect spheres prove the wound hovered squarely over the floor. Consider the sinister mechanics required for that positioning. Had she been strolling voluntarily, her skull would align with her shoes, causing any facial injuries to plummet right between her own steps. Yet security cameras clearly captured a disguised prowler stalking toward Nancy's residence that night. Savannah's testimony confirms her mother was violently snatched right out from under her covers after midnight. Internal sensors triggered, pointing to an intruder creeping through the halls. Nancy absolutely wasn't marching out willingly. Nancy was actively being abducted. The real question is, what exact carrying method produces such a specific crimson spatter? Ashley Banfield formulated a chilling hypothesis from the crime scene data. She suspects the assailant hoisted Nancy squarely over their shoulder. Such a posture leaves the victim's torso and head dangling directly down the attacker's back. Any cranial or facial trauma would guarantee a direct, downward crimson trail trailing behind his footsteps. We're talking about a perfectly vertical drop sequence mapping out his exact exit route. Crucially, his footwear would never smear the drops, since the fluid strikes the floor entirely in his wake. Hitting the main entryway forced a sudden halt. He had to wrestle with a massive, unwieldy door. Maneuvering that lock while hauling an 84-year-old victim meant stalling. That precise delay allowed drops to pool, forming those distinct satellite stains. Realigning his grip to navigate the exit frame likely jostled Nancy's weight against him. A sudden compression to her diaphragm would easily force a sudden fluid expulsion, perfectly explaining that one starkly anomalous patch in the trail. We put this exact scenario squarely to Dr. Valentine. He deemed it highly probable, given the current facts, before dropping a bombshell detail that could blow this investigation wide open. Should the victim be hauled fireman style with a bleeding head, those crimson drops fundamentally have to hit the assailant's own back. Let the gravity of that sink in. Post-crime cleanup rituals always fixate on the visible elements. They scrub their palms, their boots, the chest of their shirts, but they completely ignore their own reverse side. It's a massive blind spot. They remain totally oblivious to the fluid saturating the fabric directly between their shoulder blades. Assuming this hypothesis holds, the abductor is walking around with damning biological evidence on the back of his clothes entirely unwashed. That smoking gun exists right now. It could be staining a jacket in some dark closet, rotting in a laundry bin, or resting in a landfill waiting to be unearthed. These overlooked microscopic threads are exactly what put killers behind bars. It's the trace they were too blind to erase. Yet, that logic triggers a glaring secondary anomaly. Assuming the initial assault happened in her sleeping quarters, why does the red trail exclusively manifest near the foyer? According to Dr. Valentine, this discrepancy exposes a glaring, fundamental misunderstanding in amateur forensics. Detectives often spot a crimson pool and erroneously lock that in as point zero for the violence. Trauma does not guarantee instant spatter. Biological fluid requires a specific window to actually pool. It demands precious seconds to breach the epidermis, soak through garments, and gain enough volume to finally fall. Consider any mundane scrape you've endured. The initial impact rarely produces an instantaneous red flow. Slicing a digit takes a moment to well up, while severe internal ruptures harbor the damage deep beneath the skin before revealing themselves. That exact physiological lag translates perfectly here. The brutal strike easily happened beside her bed. Her garments or thick hair probably sponged up the initial hemorrhage, secretly collecting volume while the assailant hauled her down the halls. Reaching the main foyer simply marked the precise instant the fabric became overly saturated and broke its seal. Frankly, that detail makes the entire sequence profoundly sinister. It implies total, bloodless subjugation right inside her most private sanctuary. The attacker navigated her helpless frame past the cooking area and down corridors without shedding a single microscopic drop. Having the saturation point peak right at the exit threshold reveals a chillingly deliberate methodology. We aren't looking at a frantic, impulsive burglary gone wrong. This displays the icy calculation of an absolute professional. Ashley Banfield's inside contacts reveal that initial patrolmen rolling up on February 1st merely expected a routine welfare check for an absent senior citizen. They figured she might have just slipped out for a confused stroll. A simple case of dementia, maybe. Yet, the second seasoned detectives hit the scene. Alarm bells instantly rang. The rear entry wasn't merely unlatched, it was aggressively gaping open to the elements. Relatives quickly confirmed that the victim habitually ignored locking her patio sliders. Living in Tucson's upscale Catalina foothills breeds a false sense of security, but failing to turn a deadbolt is worlds away from abandoning an entryway entirely ajar. Unlatched implies a flush, shut frame requiring physical manipulation to test the hardware. Gaping open acts as a blatant, terrifying beacon to anyone stepping onto the property. Stepping across that main threshold, detectives found a direct, chilling sightline straight out the rear yard. The attacker had absolute dominion over her. Whoever took her knew exactly how to avoid leaving an immediate blood trail. They hauled her straight back through the residence, heading for the main door. But somewhere along that path, whatever wound Nancy suffered finally started to seep, leaving a trail of drops. By the front door, the bleeding worsened. The intruder paused to handle the locks, letting a crimson pool form. He shifted his hold, exited, and marched down the exterior walkway. The crimson trail abruptly ended right where a getaway car would typically idle. That is exactly where they loaded Nancy. A shift in posture altered the bleeding, or the wound got covered. The red drops vanished, and Nancy was gone. Those spatter marks narrate the entire sequence, bypassing any need for eyewitnesses or indoor security cameras. These forensic clues establish a clear chronology of domination and transit. Crucially, they also expose a detail law enforcement likely overlooked. Dr. Valentin hammered home a chilling reality that should alarm anyone tracking this investigation. Detectives only ever uncover the clues they actively seek. Walk into a crime scene misjudging the core narrative, and you might casually stroll past the only proof of the actual truth. When forensics initially swept Nancy's residence, did they truly grasp they were looking at a meticulously orchestrated kidnapping? Did they scour the master suite for those faint, hidden indicators of exactly how someone overpowered her? Did they dust countertops for microscopic clues mapping out the exact route an intruder took while lugging an 84-year-old victim? Or did they blindly presume a chaotic assault had occurred, searching purely for blatant signs of brutality? Smashed belongings, flipped chairs, and obvious brawls? Authorities handed the property back to her relatives roughly 30 hours after she vanished. When pushed on whether that timeline was acceptable, Dr. Valentin gave a stark, uncompromising answer. "I would have kept that property locked down indefinitely." This detail is absolutely crucial. Throughout Dr. Valentin's extensive career as a lab technician and an investigator for the Connecticut State Police, he developed a sharp eye for categorizing distinct investigations. Nancy Guthrie's vanishing drops into an incredibly uncommon classification. This is a scenario where the microscopic clues are completely steering the manhunt. Typically, lab results merely validate the narrative that cops piece together from interrogations, suspect lineups, and analyzing intent. The scientific analysis operates simultaneously, acting as a backup to traditional sleuthing. Yet in a slim 5 to 10% margin, according to Valentin, forensics take the wheel. Lacking those clues, the entire probe hits a dead end. You have zero bystanders, no glaring culprit, and absolutely no logical reason pointing toward anybody. Under those circumstances, tangible clues are your only lifeline, and when they mean everything, you guard them fiercely. You lock the perimeter down. You comb through it meticulously. You return repeatedly whenever fresh doubts surface. Nancy Guthrie's disappearance firmly occupies that 5 to 10% bracket. The tangible clues are the entire narrative. Opting to surrender the property a mere 30 hours later likely derailed any chance of unraveling the full truth. Investigators ignored several highly specific objects initially that might have blown the whole thing wide open. Nancy's front doormat sat undisturbed for weeks. Reporters snapped pictures of it. Any random passerby approaching the porch could see it. Dr. Valentine flagged that exact rug as a goldmine for microscopic particles capable of tying the perpetrator to the property. We are talking about stray threads from a car's floorboard, dirt from an isolated region, or minuscule fabric strands off footwear. Analyzing an outdoor rug is agonizingly tedious. Technicians must sift through thousands of random environmental fragments. Yet buried in that filth might be the single thread or speck of dirt that cracks the mystery. Authorities needed to seize that mat instantly. They should have bagged and tagged it immediately. Rather, it sat out there soaking up rain, random footprints, and endless contamination. The mounting hardware for Nancy's Nest security lens was similarly left behind. The attacker deliberately tore down the device itself. He put his hands on that mount. He pried at it. Had he gripped a tactical flashlight in his teeth, his spit would coat those gloves. That exact DNA would inevitably smear across the plastic mount. Detectives finally bagged the hardware, but roughly 3 weeks had already passed. That long delay likely destroyed whatever fragile DNA remained. Dr. Valentine labels these blunders as unforced errors. They are heat-of-the-moment screw-ups that no one can ever walk back. The friction of juggling overlapping police departments, the crushing weight of a relentless news cycle looking for answers, the stress of dealing with an influential local family, that entire cocktail breeds a toxic environment forcing cops to fake forward momentum. They opt for lightning-fast choices instead of calculating their moves. Valentine knows firsthand that panic breeds catastrophic slip-ups. Early in the probe, reporters directly asked Sheriff Nanos if he harbored any regrets. He actually confessed deep remorse over relinquishing the property so hastily. Clearing his throat, he admitted, "Looking back with 20/20 hindsight, I probably should have locked down that scene longer. I trust my crew. If another department wants in, we hide nothing. Sure, I likely could have waited on releasing it." That right there is a confession, a clear acknowledgement that giving up the crime scene happened way too fast. Yet 52 days down the line, sitting with News 4 Tucson, Sheriff Nanos suddenly changed his tune. "I stand by my guys and their work. I absolutely do not regret releasing the area when we did. None of it." The remorse he showed weeks prior vanished, replaced by a sudden claim of flawless execution. Dr. Valentine sidestepped the glaring contradiction, yet his breakdown of what unfolds when investigations operate under crushing pressure says it all. Now, let us break down exactly what those bloodstains reveal about Nancy's wound. The amount of blood caught on camera is substantial, but not fatal. This was not a catastrophic blow designed to kill her in minutes without a medic. Dr. Valentine chose his words with deliberate precision. This specific wound required a doctor, but she could have easily survived it. Still, and this detail matters deeply, we have zero clue what internal trauma Nancy might have suffered that left no outward trace. We are completely blind to what unfolded after she was dragged from her house. Did she get medical help? We do not know. The spatter pattern only isolates a single wound, actively bleeding at that exact split second. It completely fails to paint the full picture of the horror Nancy endured. Savannah Guthrie's latest public plea made one thing perfectly clear. The family just wants Nancy back to lay her to rest. Those words heavily imply her loved ones believe she is gone, yet Sheriff Nanos used his recent airtime to plead directly with her captor. Just hand her over, release her, drive her to a clinic or an emergency room, drop her off and walk away. That kind of plea heavily hints the sheriff is holding out hope she is still breathing. Two clashing mindsets, spotlighting the agonizing limbo that has haunted this investigation for 52 days. The blood answers nothing. All it confirms is that right as Nancy was being snatched from her property, she suffered a bleeding, but non-lethal, blow. Whatever nightmare came next is a mystery the forensic drops simply cannot solve. But look closer at the drop zones, and a crucial clue emerges. There is blood inside the getaway car. Dr. Valentine pushed this point hard. The red trail abruptly vanishes right on the concrete path. That sudden halt points strictly to one scenario: Nancy being loaded into a ride. The second she was shifted from being carried to being forced into a seat or laid out flat, the bleeding wound either shifted out of a free-falling angle or somebody clamped down hard to stem the flow. But right before that pivot, she was dripping, and some of it inevitably stained that interior. Here is why that changes everything. Human blood is notoriously stubborn to scrub clean out of a car. Amateurs wipe away the crimson and assume the job is done, entirely missing the lingering chemical footprint. You cannot spot it with the naked eye, but hit it with targeted forensic chemicals built to sniff out scrubbed crime scenes, and it glows. Even if this guy spent a dozen hours meticulously detailing the upholstery, even if he drowned it in bleach and harsh solvents, the odds of pulling latent traces are extremely high. And it would definitely be Nancy's genetics. It locks her inside that exact ride, right when she was wounded. That is an irrefutable physical link tying the car and undoubtedly its driver straight to the abduction. Dr. Valentine's warning to the detectives was blunt. Hunt down that car. The pavement stains prove it is real. It is out on the streets, holding the smoking gun. The Bureau has been knocking on doors, hunting for targeted neighborhood security tape. They are actively stitching together a grid of every ride cruising that block. Pinpoint the make and model, and the science takes over. Swab for hidden stains. Match the genetics to Nancy. Lock the suspect up. Yet 52 days in, cuffs remain empty. Not a single car has been named. From the outside looking in, this manhunt has slammed into a brick wall. Dr. Valentine framed it as a rare dead zone, where detectives are praying for lab results to steer them. Otherwise, they are flying blind. And when a trail goes cold for 52 days, the odds of cracking it vanish a little more each sunrise. But catch this final detail. The spatter betrays a chilling secret about the attacker's mindset. The purely vertical, perfectly consistent drip pattern proves he was entirely composed. He was not panicking. He was not slipping past an unsecured rear entrance. The intruder bypassed the chaos of a frantic search. His target was clear. Nancy's bedroom. Whatever he did to subdue her left, absolutely no obvious, bloody trace. From there, he transported her body at a chillingly deliberate pace. He moved so methodically that the red drops falling below formed perfectly round, vertical stains. Then, he paused right at the main entryway. He lingered there for a shockingly long interval, wrestling with the lock while Nancy's life slowly pooled around his shoes. Crossing the threshold, he navigated the exterior path with that exact same, steady, measured rhythm, eventually loading her into a waiting car. The parking spot was entirely strategic. This wasn't some random, impulsive strike. We're looking at a predator who meticulously plotted every move. A phantom who knew exactly how to dominate the environment. Just look at the disguised shadow captured on the porch cam at 1:47 in the morning. He advanced leading with his right side, purposefully obscuring his face by looking left. Rick Castigar, a veteran with 46 years of experience. Working alongside the Pima County Sheriff's Office, he scrutinized the tape and concluded, this guy had the surveillance blind spots completely memorized. You don't just guess that kind of layout on the fly. That requires serious homework. An intruder who maps out security lenses beforehand doesn't just stumble upon those angles during the break-in. They learn them through stalking. And if the January 11th timestamp, verified early on by Google, proves correct, this suspect was doing dry runs a full 3 weeks before the actual kidnapping went down. 21 days to stalk Nancy's daily habits. 21 days to realize her rear entry points were practically an open invitation. 3 whole weeks to orchestrate the breach, the subjugation, and the getaway. The crimson trail staining Nancy's floors practically screams the truth. Validating the eerie porch camera video, this was a highly calculated strike, executed by a ghost who operated with absolute, terrifying precision. We have to confront the brutal reality facing her loved ones. For 52 agonizing days, the family of Nancy Guthrie has been trapped in a nightmare of doubt, wondering if she's breathing, if her final moments were agony, or if the truth will remain buried forever. Uncovering biological matter right by the foyer of Nancy's residence only twists the knife deeper into their ongoing, unimaginable grief. It proves she was violently assaulted within her own 4 walls, a supposed sanctuary where she had every right to feel utterly protected. Savannah Guthrie painted a haunting picture of her mother being snatched directly from her mattress under the cover of total darkness. The chilling thought of an 84-year-old victim dragged from her ultimate safe haven has sent shivers down the spine of anyone keeping tabs on this investigation. The forensic spatter undeniably backs up that grim scenario. Nancy was simply resting in her room. A predator breached her walls, a shadow navigated her hallways, an intruder lugged her toward the exit as her life slipped away. Then, she was simply gone. Desperate for any leads, her relatives have posted a bounty topping $1.2 million for clues. That could bring Nancy back alive. A dedicated federal strike team has stepped in, while detectives at the Pima County Sheriff's Office keep grinding away at the leads every single morning. Yet, 52 days into the hunt, the agonizing mysteries vastly outweigh the facts. The crimson spots scattered across Nancy's property did solve one puzzle piece. We finally pinpointed exactly where the trauma truly started. We can track the grim route extending from the interior to the yard. The droplet shapes strongly imply her body was hoisted up, rather than violently pulled or strolling on her own. Still, the most haunting riddles remain completely unresolved. Where did Nancy vanish to? Who orchestrated this kidnapping? What was the motive? Dr. Valentine brought up a chilling point that ought to stick with every single observer. He noted that intense scrutiny routinely breeds sloppy mistakes, and those careless blunders invariably derail even the most solid criminal inquiries. Opting to relinquish the incident site a mere 30 hours in, the baffling failure to swiftly secure the entryway rug as evidence. Ignoring the mounting hardware, choosing a rushed sweep over a meticulous, forensic deep dive. All of these highly questionable investigative calls stemmed from massive external stress, the heavy burden of a media circus, and the intense spotlight of dealing with prominent relatives. The crushing weight of relentless headlines ultimately might have tainted the entire hunt, and now, 52 agonizing days into the search, the devastating fallout is obvious. An inquiry entirely reliant on trace biology was managed with a recklessness that utterly destroyed that advantage. Leaving detectives seemingly hitting a massive brick wall, Dr. Valentine broke down his strict, unyielding approach to dissecting an active crime site. He stressed that crossing a threshold reveals a hidden narrative. The walls literally whisper the intimate details of a victim's daily habits, how they organize their sanctuary, what constitutes their routine, what feels out of place. The secret is spotting the slightest, jarring anomaly against the backdrop of their everyday life. Yet, you can't possibly flag the bizarre unless you've fully grasped what typical looks like first. Grasping that baseline requires an incredibly slow, deliberate excavation of the environment. Scouring every inch of the property without missing a beat. Cataloging every single detail, allowing the silent clues to speak for themselves instead of forcing a premature theory onto the physical environment. He compared it to digesting a novel. If you jump straight to the end, the motives and the suspects remain a total mystery. You completely overlook the subtle hints that explain the climax. That exact logic governs criminal forensics. You dissect the chaos with surgical precision. You let the physical facts steer the wheel. You absolutely never jump the gun. Looking at Nancy's abduction, did the squad actually sweep her sheets for DNA? The physical proof? Did investigators even realize they were looking at calculated precision instead of a frantic struggle? Or did the rush to wrap things up blind them to glaring red flags? That remains a troubling mystery. Yet Dr. Valentin suspects that clearing the perimeter, a mere 30 hours later, points to a probe fueled by panic, not strict protocol. Hasty choices guarantee overlooked clues. Solid leads vanish into thin air. Investigations go completely cold. However, amid all this debate over crime scene protocols and police tactics, a crucial reality often fades into the background. Nancy Guthrie isn't just luminal glowing in the dark, she transcends textbooks and autopsy reports. She represents far more than an abstract puzzle. We are talking about a fiercely devoted matriarch who dedicated 84 years to enriching the very neighborhood that cherished her. She enjoyed steady habits and close-knit bonds. Her residence was her ultimate sanctuary. A deeply caring family anchored her world. Just 52 nights ago, Nancy rested peacefully upstairs. Shortly after, a shadowy figure breached her sanctuary and dragged her into the dark. The intruder snatched her straight from the mattress, lugging her wounded, bleeding body down the halls before vanishing without a trace. For 52 agonizing days, her relatives have endured pure psychological torture, desperately wondering whether she still draws breath. They remain haunted by visions of her agonizing last moments, terrified of a permanent farewell. Savannah Guthrie still pushes through her daily broadcasts, yet observant viewers catch the crushing burden behind her eyes, a silent agony laced with a relentless yearning for closure. The youngest generations trudge forward, robbed of their matriarch, forced to navigate childhood beneath the looming shadow of her permanent absence. We aren't analyzing a mere docket number here. We are witnessing an entire bloodline completely ripped apart. Each silent sunrise only sharpens the blade of their grief. Meanwhile, the crimson spatter left behind walls whispers a chilling narrative. Those drops map out the exact location the violence erupted. They track the precise path the suspect dragged her unconscious frame. The droplets paint a portrait of a chillingly disciplined, terrifyingly organized predator. Yet, they remain entirely mute regarding her current whereabouts. They offer zero clues regarding her survival. The stains refuse to reveal the culprit's identity or their twisted motivation. The actual truth hides somewhere on the streets, smeared across the upholstery of the getaway ride, baked into the attacker's garments. It lurks within undiscovered security tapes, buried deep inside the twisted psychology of the phantom who shattered this peaceful household. Throughout these 52 agonizing rotations, society has fixated entirely on the missing puzzle pieces, fueling endless rumors and wild internet hypotheses. Recently, however, a crucial breakthrough surfaced. We finally mapped the physical trauma markers inside the residence and analyzed the sinister trail left behind. Those stains expose a frightening level of calculated premeditation. It hardly closes the book, but it undeniably turns a critical page. When dealing with such a labyrinthine investigation, every verified fact counts. A single microscopic clue might finally decode this harrowing timeline. Each newly unclassified detail acts as a flare, increasing the odds that a civilian might spot the golden thread pointing straight to Nancy. Forensic biology remains a stark chapter in her narrative. It represents a horrifying saga demanding a definitive, unvarnished conclusion. This nightmare demands ultimate justice for Nancy, for Savannah, and for loved ones stranded in purgatory for 52 relentless days. If you demand justice for this heinous act, join the Crime Uncovered community by subscribing and smashing the thumbs up icon. How do you theorize those missing 16 minutes played out between the upstairs sleeping quarters and the main entryway? Here at Crime Uncovered, we fiercely reject half-baked police work. We hold investigators to the highest scientific standards while crusading for Nancy.